Okay, so today I'm going to present the results of the mental health survey that was conducted in CEE last winter. I'm Ann Jeffers. I'm an associate professor in the department. And before I get started, I would like to acknowledge the individuals who contributed to this project, including several students, Katie from the staff, Lissa, myself. And we also want to acknowledge funding from the CEE department and the DEI committee, which was used to purchase gift cards that we gave out to individuals who participated. We did a raffle. Okay, so to refresh your memory, as far as the mental health survey, the idea was that we wanted to get a baseline of the mental well-being in the department, looking at students, postdocs, faculty, and staff, and to gather that data to inform initiatives within CEE. The design of the survey was such that we used questions from the Healthy Mind Survey, which is a mental health survey that's given out to college campuses across the US. They have questions on mental health status as well as mental health service utilization, and we replicated those questions on our survey. There were also several questions from Rackham focused on things like how's the physical space, the policies, department climate and culture, and the learning environment within the department in terms of mental health. And the duration of the survey was kind of lengthy. It was about 15 to 20 minutes, and we left it open for about a month, from February to March of 2022. And we gathered both quantitative and qualitative measures. There were nearly 200 individuals who responded to the survey, and you can see the number of responses on the bar chart along with the response rate for each of those categories. So we had 38% of our undergraduate students participate in the survey, 42% of graduate students, and 70% of staff. The numbers for postdocs and faculty were on the low side, so we don't provide any quantitative data here in today's presentation. We also looked at demographics, but we sort of lumped them into all staff, faculty, and students represented in these different categories so that we didn't sort of isolate anybody out, but you can kind of see that we do have representation in our department. Okay, so getting into the results, these slides have a lot of data, and it'll take a minute to sort of take everything in. But if we take a look at the top left slide, the top left figure, it says how much time do you spend in a typical week attending classes and labs, and you can see that undergraduate students and master's students are spending a lot more time in classes. The second figure on the top right-hand side says how much time do you spend a week studying and doing schoolwork outside of classes and labs. And again, a lot of hours being put in by the undergraduate students, and to a lesser extent, master's and PhD students focusing on the coursework. And then the bottom left-hand corner says how much time do you spend on a typical week doing research. And of course, we expect PhD students to be doing more research. But also note that there are a number of students who are responding that they're putting in 40 plus hours per week in research. And then how much do you agree with the following statement? I am confident that I'm able to finish my degree no matter what the challenges I may face. And again, the majority of students are pretty confident in finishing their degree, which is a good sign. This slide shows the impact on academic performance. So the question was, in the past 4 weeks, how many days have you felt emotional or mental difficulties have hurt your academic performance? And this figure I thought was quite interesting because there are a large number of students who are saying that they're losing 6 or more days of their productivity due to mental health challenges. And that's sort of reflected in some of the later slides. In looking at the factors impacting productivity, the first set of bars is the undergraduate student population, the second set is master's, and the third set is PhD students. The different categories are shown on the right, and you can see that of all three categories, the students have identified that stress, anxiety, depression, and sleep are the major stressors that are affecting their work performance. We also did a screening for depression and anxiety using standard survey measurements. This is the PHQ-9 survey instrument. And basically, the numbers that we should take a look at are on the far right-hand column, where you can see that 38% of the undergraduate students, 38% of the master's students, 18% of the PhD students screened positive for moderate to severe depression. I've had some conversation with various individuals on campus about these numbers because they are rather high. And just for point of reference, you can see down here a paper that was published in 2020 by the CDC that shows that the general population pre-pandemic was about 6.5%, so considerably lower than where we are today. But if you look at the pandemic numbers, 24.3%, that sort of explains the stress that is exacerbating the survey results in this particular case. So even still, the numbers are concerning, and I think it does point that there is work to be done to help get our students the help that they need. Similar numbers for anxiety, although a little bit less severe. So if we look at the far right-hand column, we've got 31% of undergraduate students, 34% master's students, and 25% PhD students screening positive for moderate to severe anxiety. Compare those to the general population. Again, pre-pandemic, the numbers were like 8%. And then in 2020, during the pandemic, they skyrocketed to 25%. And so I think the pandemic has some role to play in this, but it's certainly something that's affecting our students' well-being. We also did a screening for healthy behaviors using the flourishing scale. This is a tool that measures things like relationships, self-esteem, purpose, optimism, and so forth. And on this flourishing scale, the number of 48 or greater, which would be the far right bar on the bar chart, would be considered healthy behaviors, and anything less than that is ranked lower. So we have, of our students, PhD students, master's, and undergraduate students, the scores are comparatively low when we relate them to the score that we saw for the staff in our department. So the staff showed very healthy behaviors with a response of 50%, but the student responses are a little bit lower. In terms of seeking help, I have some more data on this, but I didn't want to sort of overwhelm people with graphs and stuff like that. But there is one slide or one set of charts that I did want to pull out, which is one of the barriers to students getting help. And there were two sets of questions. One asked, most people think less of a person who has received mental health treatment. And then the second one said, I would think less of a person who's received mental health treatment. And you can see that the difference between these two charts, right? Like, most people are going to think less of mental illness. People tend to agree with that statement more than I would think less. And I think it just goes to show that people in CEE are not going to think less of anybody if they get mental health treatment. And so hopefully by sharing this, it'll help to break down some of that stigma. Okay, in terms of the seeking help. There was a question on the survey that asked, who would you most likely talk to at your school to get help? And the PhD students overwhelmingly said that they would talk to their PhD advisor. For the master's students, the results are sort of split, whereas for the undergraduate students, there were several students who said that they would speak to a professor from one of their classes, but even more so, there were a large number of students who said that they would speak to no one. And I think that that's something that, that we should try to change. Okay, so this year, if you asked a professor at GSI for an accommodation of some sort, how likely was it to be given to you? The majority of students are saying, you know what, the professors and GSIs are accommodating, or I have a range of experiences, some accommodating, some not. But there are some students who responded that the professor was not accommodating. All right, so to summarize the findings, roughly a third of CEE students at all levels are losing 6 or more days of productivity a month to mental health challenges. And stress, anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges have the greatest negative impact on work for the CEE students. Anxiety and depression screenings show a high prevalence of moderate to severe anxiety and depression in CEE students at all levels. Only about a third of the CEE students show positive mental health behaviors on the flourishing scale. The majority of CEE students exercise regularly, but they're not getting 8 hours of sleep. That was, I have the graphs at the tail end here if anybody's interested in seeing them. And in addition, cigarette use, vaping, and marijuana use was low. There was some evidence of alcohol use with students drinking 1 to 2 drinks per day, and that's something to be mindful of. Students are not necessarily getting help for the mental health problems despite indicating that they need help. There was a small number of students who didn't know where to go for help, mostly undergraduate students and master's students, and also the slide that I showed you where stigma appears to be prevalent. PhD students were likely to reach out to their advisor, whereas undergraduate students were likely to reach out to no one. Undergraduate and master's students were likely to reach out to a professor more than anyone else, and that feeds into some of the actions that the department is taking. There were some additional questions that provided some information, and I'll just sort of summarize what those findings were. But basically, with regards to physical space, there were a lot of comments about the lack of natural light, the lack of communal space and things like that in the G.G. Brown EWRE buildings. Student advisor relationships is known to be important. There are several papers published on this topic about the importance of student advisor relationships in buffering mental health challenges. And what we saw in the data was that students either had a really great experience with their advisor or a negative experience with their advisor, and those who were being supported by their advisor tended to be doing better than the students who are not having a good relationship with their advisor. There were several comments about the flexibility of classes. Some students indicated that there were instructors in the department who were sort of rigid with their policies, maybe wouldn't make recordings of classes accessible and things like that. So that's something that comes into the recommendation or the actions that the department is taking. There were a lot of comments about the prelim exams and the stress, the fact that we don't prepare our students for prelim exams, and so that's something that we're taking action on. There were several students who indicated a poor experience with CAPS on Central Campus, and from talking to some individuals throughout the College of Engineering, I've figured out that the care center is a better place to be sending our students to. The care center is in the College of Engineering. It has resources beyond just counseling, but it does have an embedded CAPS counselor there, and the wait times are considerably lower. And so we're trying to get the word around to funnel our students to the care center instead of to CAPS. And then several students indicated that the cost of living in Ann Arbor is high, the winters are pretty brutal, and the days are short, and that is in its own mental health challenge. So in summary, we identified several areas for improvement related to course instruction and degree requirements, testing and evaluation, including the prelim exam, physical space, unwritten expectations, what is deemed important, publishing expectations, student advisor relationships, referring students to the care center, and making students aware of emergency resources such as the Rackham emergency funding. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what CEE is doing to address the concerns that were raised in the survey. First off, the data is a little bit incomplete. There's only so much that we can get from the survey. And so what we're going to do is to try to have more conversations with undergraduate students to identify stressors and seek opportunities for improvement. In addition, we're also going to dig a little deeper into the issues that master's students face. We'll be holding listening sessions with Elizabeth Rohr, who's the Rackham Wellbeing Advocate. And through this, we hope to get a sense of what's going on behind those numbers of 38% depression and 20-some% anxiety, Also, since faculty play a very significant role in this whole process, we're going to focus on enhancing the awareness of faculty. So these results from the survey were shared at a faculty meeting. A list of resources is being compiled and handed out to faculty so that they can help refer students to the right individual on campus or off campus. Sample syllabus statements and resources are going to be sent to faculty in advance of the winter break. And then we'll encourage the sharing of best practices for sustainable ways to offer flexibility in our classes. For example, in our DEI committee, we had some conversations about calling it student hours instead of office hours to kind of reduce the barrier to students attending office hours, or giving an allotment of unexcused absences and providing access to recordings, setting expectations at the start of the semester to encourage student success. And faculty plan to spend time in an upcoming meeting to discuss the undergraduate student struggles that they're seeing and the strategies to address them. We're also trying to work on our departmental communication and the culture within our department. We're gonna, you may have seen in recent newsletters more and healthy updates in the department newsletter that are tailored with content that's based on the survey results. And so there was one that I think in the last newsletter, or the newsletter from last week, something about healthy sleep and maybe the time change and how that can affect you and things like that. We also have this anonymous feedback form. I don't know that it's widely been advertised. So again, just another plug. There is a way to give feedback to the department at any point in time by filling out the form here. You can submit it anonymously, or you can include your contact information. But either way, if you have a concern, there is a mechanism for you to report that. The CEE DEI committee is also having discussions on creating norms and values for the department. We want to focus on our commitment to academic freedom while giving members of our community the tools they need to handle challenging situations, and this is something that was prompted from a seminar incident that happened about a year ago. To address the physical space needs, the department has been working for a couple years now on this renovation to the EWRE G.G. Brown connector. And that project is a go, and you'll start hearing some construction noise soon, but basically the focus is on creating more natural light, focusing on communal space, modernizing the laboratory configurations. In the weekly newsletter, we've put a renovations update section so that anything that's related to the renovation, you can get that information quickly. And then any students who are affected by the renovation will be informed in advance regarding the specific details. So those are sort of the general actions being taken. There are some things that we're doing that are specific to graduate students, and I want to highlight those as well. So CEE was selected to be part of the Rackham Advocate Program, which is a pilot program from Rackham to promote the mental health of graduate students. And there's a group of us, faculty, staff, student, who have been meeting pretty regularly since the summer. And we've had discussions on ways to correct the prelim exam process, to address the physical space needs. We're talking about student advisor relationships and mentoring, department and program norms and expectations. Related to this, we've sort of branched off into a subgroup of this advocate program who's focused on discussions related to prelim exams. And you may be aware that there is a new workshop that is ongoing that's hosted by Professor Scruggs that aims to teach students what the prelim exam is all about and how to best prepare for the prelim exam. In addition to that, EWRE has completely revamped their prelim exam. They're piloting a major revision that emphasizes skills that will support the students' research rather than focusing solely on coursework. In terms of student advisor relationships, the CEE PhD mentoring framework was launched last year, I think. If you go to the department's website, you can read more about it. We're also working on creating a figure to sort of lay out what the process is and what the different individuals involved in the process are going to look like. Also, the Rackham mentoring resources are becoming available. Rackham has sort of made it a requirement that every faculty member create a mentoring plan with their PhD student. And so our department is sort of ahead of the curve on that one. We also had a CEE town hall on student advisor relationships in the winter of 2022. The graduate committee is currently reviewing those recommendations, and those recommendations will be used to inform department policy on the mentorship of PhD students. And then in addition to the mental health survey, the CEE department also hosted a graduate student town hall on grad school culture and mental wellness in winter 2022. And those conversations focused on supporting graduate students who have struggled with a lack of community. The recommendations are currently being reviewed by the CEE graduate committee, so we have lots of information that came in from this survey, from the town halls, and we're trying to work on addressing that information. So I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions and discussion. If people have questions in the chat, feel free to chat. Or if you want to just ask in this room, I would ask that you use the microphone so that it gets caught on the recording. And other than that, that is a whirlwind tour of our survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah. I have a question, Anne.
So I'm just wondering, apart from what the data say, what is your level of optimism about culture change and student satisfaction in CEE?
I think we're in a really good place. I think we have already started to do. I think we've already started to do a lot of things. I mean, my goodness, the list of actions on this set of slides just speaks volumes to the number of people who are involved in this work and have a vested interest in the well-being of our students. I think we are still in the post-pandemic phase, and I think that's a lot of where the problem is coming from. I think people are still really burnt out from the pandemic, the online learning, and all that, and we haven't completely bounced back. So this semester, even though we're completely in person and things should be back to normal, I don't get the sense that we are back to normal just yet. And I don't know what actions we should do to try to overcome that, or if there is even a way to do that. I know that a pandemic is a traumatic event, and I think as a community we're just feeling that trauma, right? And yeah. But I think we're doing good stuff here, and I hope that students will take advantage of the resources that we're making available to them, and I do hope that people sort of take initiative as well in their own well-being, and trying to get back on our feet, you know, as a whole. I think CEE is doing good stuff.
Grab the mic and share. So Matt in the chat said, "This is really nice, thank you. Is there any desire to conduct this survey every 2 to 3 years to compare longitudinal data?"
I personally think that would be a good idea. You know, I do think this year's data, it's a baseline, but it's also a bit of a blip because it's still the pandemic, right? And you know, I think we should continue to monitor the well-being of our community members, and so I would like to see the department continue maybe a shortened version of the survey that we gave out. You know, I don't think all the questioning is necessary to be given out every time, but I do think we can do some basic screenings and stuff like that. Okay.